Marketplaces aren't a threat to anyone. It's a net additional because it drives you to the more valuable, high margin, more revenue generating parts of your business. It's a different way to collect money. It's a different route for vendors. But in the end, all of the end customer behavioral psychology journey type of mapping and research we're doing is leading this way. There's almost no credible counterpoint to why this won't continue to grow at 86% compounded. So it's not an add-on. It's not an adjacent layer to your strategy. At some point it's going to become core, and 1/3 of your customers are going to prefer to buy there, and 1/3 all the money in your TAM will be there, and 1 million partners will surround that.
Learn how to master cloud marketplaces in just 5 weeks with our cohort course. Accelerate your growth by tapping into the $300+ billion cloud spend that enterprises have committed to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Discover the future of go-to-market with Roman. During 10 weekly sessions, you'll learn how to leverage this fast-growing channel and network with top industry experts and partnership leaders. We will dive into marketplace strategies, internal buy-in, building relationships with the cloud, and mastering co-sell. Join our upcoming cohort.
Really excited about today's event. Today we're going to be talking about how to win in cloud go-to-market in 2024. What is staggering in cloud marketplaces is this amount of cloud commits that huge hyperscalers accumulated. For those who are maybe new in cloud marketplaces, this is interface between infrastructure, platform, SaaS, and customers. Cloud marketplaces accumulated so many thousands and thousands. I guess AWS said it's more than 15,000 apps. And to kick us off today, the expert in cloud marketplaces shared his insights. McBain recognized this trend very early on. He predicted 86% growth of cloud marketplaces year over year, sort of on par with AI. Jay is amazing, and if you're not following Jay, you should. I'm really excited to have him today.
I do kind of wake up every day thinking about marketplaces and thinking about the broader channels, partnerships, alliances, ecosystems that make it all work. And, I start at the very top, at the world economy, country by country, industry by industry. How is the world changing? Today, 75% of world trade is sold indirectly. And we look at all 27 industries and look at how that happens. But we're also watching how cloud marketplaces, digital marketplaces in different industries are starting to take effect. And if you look at considered purchases, those are purchases that are, a little bit more expensive, take a little bit more time, what we call the 28 moments before making a decision. You go through and educate yourself. Not only are we seeing growth across the board in every considered purchase category in consumer, but what was in the pandemic, we had 10 years of growth through the first 3 months for obvious reasons. Every single category in every single quarter keeps jumping up since then. So we have McKinsey, for example, who is a big consulting firm that happens to advise the Fortune 500, the board and the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world, how the world's going to work. They're talking about a $70 trillion ecosystem, which, the previous slide had 105 trillion total GDP around the world, moving into this space. But more specifically, they talk about $17 trillion of B2B moving through marketplaces. This is a ridiculously large number. It's too large. The prediction's too fast and too large by 2030. But the fact that we're debating tens of trillions of dollars is important, that this is a large, fast-growing opportunity. The world that I work in most is the technology industry. So out of the $105 trillion world economy, about 5% of that is what businesses and governments spend from a B2B perspective in every technology and telco category. You see here hardware and software. 2/3 of all of it is services. This year, tech services became larger than telco services. That becomes important because this entire pie is open to marketplaces. And this is what we'll be talking about. Inside this larger opportunity inside software, hardware, and services, we had made a prediction years ago that by 2025, the market would grow and these major marketplaces would deliver $45 billion by 2025. And that's like 86% compounded growth rate, which is one of the largest growth rates any part of the technology industry. The fact of the matter is, we think, or I think we undercalled this again. We think we're going to actually hit this probably mid to third quarter of next year. So we're going to hit this prediction sooner than 2025. So if you just look over kind of the course of what's been happening, and if I go back a couple of years when Microsoft dropped its marketplace fees from 20% down to 3%, this triggered a lot of activity. It was shortly after that, a couple months later, that Google slashed theirs down to 3%. And guess what happened last week? AWS dropped theirs to 3% or less based on volume and based on a number of things. So now the 3 hyperscalers are all with public-facing percentages on marketplace fees. What this does for the first time in 43 years is resets the economics of partnering. So if you look backwards, and I used to sell laptops for 17 years, and we pay a certain margin. It was like 40% in the 80s, 30% in the 90s, 20%. Now it's like single digits. But the point of paying the margin at the point of sale is you were hoping through the front end margin and all the back end elements to that, that the partner was there during those first 28 moments before the sale. You were hoping that the partner did all that work around converting that customer. And then you hope that the partner's there every 30 days forever. The problem is hope isn't a strategy, and it was rarely true. In some cases, there was a partner that would join an RFP at the last minute, price themselves $1 less than the competition, and win the deal. As fast as they took the money, they left the customer high and dry and moved on to the next one. So paying 20 or 30% margin at that moment, you severely overpaid that partner. But on the flip side, there's a whole half of partners that you underpay. They do all the marketing, they do the selling, they do the engineering, they do the long-term support. They're doing everything. And you end up winning a deal in your sleep. And by paying them that margin, you actually underpaid the amount of SG&A and other things they took away from your business. So what you'd like to do is pay based on value. What did the partner actually do, and pay them for those very particular moments, so that if I have a really good partner, I'm paying them twice as much because they're doing all that great work. So that's the economics of partnering. And by marketplaces driving that to 3% for collecting a customer's money, it's identical in consumer to a credit card swipe. It's the same amount of money that Visa, MasterCard, and 17 other unnamed companies in Wall Street make for every time you swipe your credit card. But it's basically telling the world, B2C or B2B, the entire world economy, the value of collecting a customer's money, taking on the risk that they won't pay, sending out BIF to collect those payments, and all the other things, is only 3%. It's not 10, it's not 20, it's not 30. And this is what really marketplaces have done for the consumer. Also, in recent weeks, you have several now larger vendors talking about multi-billion-dollar businesses through marketplaces. So CrowdStrike issued a press release talking about $1 billion sold through inception of the program with AWS, but that was quickly followed by Splunk, followed by Snowflake, followed by Palo Alto. So now you've got a group of 4 companies in the last couple of weeks talking about billion-dollar businesses through one single marketplace. So when we talk about $45 billion, we're getting there much faster than what our original predictions were. The other prediction we made years ago is that AWS would become a top 10 distributor around the world by 2025. They would join the likes of TD SYNNEX and Ingram, who are $50 and $60 billion distributors. They're bigger than Nike and Coca-Cola, Starbucks, McDonald's combined. These are big, big companies. And it happened. And it probably happened much sooner than 2025. Again, these multi-billion-dollar vendors and the amount of dry powder that Roman shared in terms of future credits have them already in that top 10 conversation. They'll probably be in the top 5 by the time we have this conversation in 2025. And so what are the public things AWS released last week at reInvent? Numbers. And so for the first time, they're being very specific about the benefits and the results and things like that. And for the first time, we're starting to see Microsoft and Google and others and Salesforce and others go to Wall Street and start talking about the value that they're providing and the amount of connection points they have in this industry. So that's another positive sign, again, just happening in the last week since reInvent. So where we're going from here, I look at how money changes hands. And if you look at that $4.7 trillion, 73.1% of that last year happened indirectly. And when I look at that, traditional distribution two-tier model, this is changing rapidly. For the 35,000 vendors that we work with, right from the largest down to the smallest SaaS vendors, they are reconsidering how they go to market, where their cash registers need to be, how the franchising is going to work, how transactions are going to work, to get customers on the dance floor. And this is a 7-layer conversation now about who's going to own these marketplaces, how much money is going to go into each, and how it's all going to shake out over the next 3 to 5 years. So really interesting that you have hundreds of companies now building out marketplace technology, looking for their slice of the pie and adding different value depending on the buyer type, the industry they're in, the segment they're in, the geography that they live in, the actual products that they're buying, or the actual business models of the partners that surround them. So really interesting times. And it supports this broader conversation, back to McKinsey again, where 82% of the world's CEOs, and this isn't just tech, we're talking pharmaceuticals and banking, insurance, manufacturing, automotive, are investing more in partnerships. As every company is looking to change their own model, from your toothbrush to your car to your software and your hardware, everyone is considering subscription consumption models. These models don't work unless they're wrapped around partnerships. And I remind people that you don't buy Netflix from your cable guy in the white van. You buy it through a digital subscription on a marketplace. This idea in the future of how you stitch together everything in your life will become more marketplace driven, given these new business models. And these 82% of CEOs are having deeper conversations with us than we've ever heard before. All of them know their target addressable market. The fact that they're talking about their service available and service obtainable markets, they're talking about go-to-market and route to markets, they're talking about cash registers and franchise locations and how they attract their customers at the minute scale is impressive. And GTM, RTM is becoming that board level conversation in every company. We also have the buyer changing at the same time. Across those considered purchase categories, across the tech industry, the millennial generation will be the majority in quantity and budget by the end of next year. Obviously, the iPad generation grew up digitally. They lived through the pandemic, and they are very open, not only to multi-layers to solve a solution, 7 layers of a SaaS deal, 7 layers of an infrastructure deal, 7 layers of a security deal, but they're open to marketplaces in terms of how to transact that and how that's all going to come together with the 7 partners that they trust. We're starting to unwrap the 28 moments and how important marketplaces are in terms of putting together a lot of these configurations and quotes, but earlier in the journey, as it's being used as a marketing tool to align some of these influential inflection points as people are getting to that purchase in the upper right. We're watching the group of 7, the trusted partners. This millennial generation think this is a team sport, and they don't look at one transactional partner. They look at a group of 7, and they're choosing a group of 7 across 20 different partner types, millions of potential tech services companies that wrap around them. And all of these services, all of these multipliers that get kicked out from this actually transact through the marketplace. The hardware plus the software plus the services all gets procured and provisioned in the same spot.